take that through response that you have up there on the.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much. So I stand up here and I say I do Japanese style acupuncture, and people nod. And sometimes, well, actually quite often, people come to see me and they have already experienced acupuncture. I'll say, have you had acupuncture? And they'll say, oh yes. And I'll say, well, how was that? Well, I don't know, nothing really happened. Or something like, it was a while ago, or I went to one of those places where I sat in a barca lounger, and they just put needles in me, and I'm not sure what happened. I think I felt better. So, those sort of indecisive descriptions of their experience with acupuncture is something that you might hear. You might hear somebody, you might offer, might say, have you tried acupuncture? And someone might say, oh, it didn't do much for me. And so I'd like to help you understand why it might be a little different if you sent them to me. And so, because it isn't all just needles. I mean, is it? Is it all just needles? You stick them in specific points and places on the body, and I have a secret map, and you don't. And that's how it goes, right? I don't think so. I really don't. But I'd like to help you understand that over 20 years ago, I began using acupuncture as a way to treat my clients. And I was trained in what was and is now the current standard, which is called traditional Chinese medicine. And it's standard for the United States. It's what they test us on for licensure. So it's the thing we have to remember is that particular style and its approach to acupuncture. And it's also what is, when people talk about receiving acupuncture, chances are they've received this style, traditional Chinese medicine. And it has a different paradigm, and it's one that is built on really thinking through the point prescription that you will do. And it's a list. We were tested on the list, so we know the list. But it may or may not be the right list for you. So one of the things that I did, as you heard from Howard's question, is I was a massage therapist. I was used to touch as a way of understanding the body. I'd done it for, 11 solid years before I even began acupuncture school. And so I found this idea of using my head to evaluate what was happening in a body to be quite difficult for me to really get. I mean, I could intellectually get it, but I didn't get the feedback touch-wise. And I had this frustration in my practice. I was having this disconnect. I could think up a prescription and I could, use that prescription on someone, and then they would have that response that I often hear, well, I don't know, did it help? Oh, and I'd say, well, let's talk again next week, and we can talk about it. And that to me was, something felt wrong, because I was so used to being able to work on a body and having something change. And I had also had the experience of being treated by my now master, Kiko Matsumoto. I was treated by her 28 years ago now. And what happened on that table transformed me in that moment, and I stayed healed. I'd had a lump in my breast, actually, and in front of a room full of people in 45 minutes, it melted, and it never came back. And I'd had it for 10 years. I had been kind of avoiding dealing with it, and here it was. It melted, never came back. So it was deep, lasting healing that I experienced. And I also got something else from that, which was a kind of inspiration that there was something else that I could learn to do, that I wasn't restricted to just this one style that I had thought was really the style of acupuncture, in the way that most of us, around a community, kind of think, oh, that's the style of acupuncture. There is one. It's acupuncture. It's got a capital A. So my teacher is Kiko Matsumoto, And I'll see if I can get a picture of her up here. Maybe. Ah, there she is. She's up in that top right corner with Monika Kobleka, who's the taller woman. Kiko Matsumoto is one of two masters who were trained by Master Nagano. This Master Kayoshi Nagano, who for 50 years used his extraordinary skills at palpation and pulse diagnosis. He was excellent at pulse diagnosis. And he developed unique and ingenious acupuncture strategies. And before he became completely blind, Master Nagano memorized the two Chinese books, the Su Wen and the Ling Shu, which are medical canon, 2,000 years old. And he would use these, he'd contemplate them, and he'd use these to develop ideas and methods that are grounded in these traditional ideas. And from that, he'd innovate and he'd craft these amazing protocols. So you might not know this, I didn't, that in Japan, acupuncture has been a profession of the blind since the Edo period, which is the early 1600s until the mid 1800s. And diagnosis through touch is a highly developed method at the heart of Japanese acupuncture. So within the living tradition of her teacher, Master Nagano, Kiko Matsumoto brings together this diagnostic understanding through palpation and insights of the classical text. She's a real fan of the classical texts. And her methods have begun to be disseminated because Monika Kobleka is an excellent explainer of Kiko's work. She was Kiko's apprentice for over 10 years. And she has given this gift of her understanding to a group of us. And you can see a group of us sitting around with Kiko and Monika. And we're thrilled to have this opportunity to understand better what Kiko Sensei is trying to help us with. So one of the things that is different about Nagano Matsumoto style, or this Japanese style of acupuncture, has to do with a concept that Master Nagano has, which is that we're treating the root of the problem. We're not just treating symptoms. We're not simply treating your wrist pain. We're going to go find out what's driving that wrist pain. Why is it a wrist pain instead of a head pain, instead of an eye pain? There must be something else, driving that. And so if we think about trees, I love trees. Trees is a good, as a metaphor that, one of the things that we can imagine if we were trees is that we would want to, if we were going to assist a tree to do better, we'd want to nourish the tree, we'd want to, somehow contribute to its longevity. And intuitively, we would know we need to nourish this tree. We need to take care of its root. We don't need to just trim its leaves or we do need to prune it appropriately, but we also need to nourish it. So, if we don't do that, it won't withstand the stresses of windstorms and too wet soils. It won't withstand those things. And we kind of intuitively know that. So it's our, in correcting this, Kiko has this other notion. She says that, and we can apply this to a tree too, for example. She says that chi is the ability to deliver nutrition to every cell in the body. The failure of this vital function is the root of myriad diseases. And so all of us intuitively know that living systems really need to be nourished in order to thrive. And so Kiko Sensei uses this idea to treat metabolic diseases, autoimmune diseases, even structural imbalances. And these are manifestations, in her way of thinking, of a root imbalance. So restoring chi restores vitality. This restoration of chi function has the ability, clearly, to support the body. And so the body once again can move. It no longer signals through pain or stiffness. It's unfinished healing. So cells are once again nourished. There's breath and movement, inhalation and exhalation, a restored resilience, and spirit prevails. So I'd like to just say I am so deeply appreciative of Kiko Sensei and her work and her ability to communicate the living tradition and her sharing of that living tradition with acupuncturists in the United States and all over the world. And I'm honored to be part of that tradition. So thank you.